flying prices to the moon. The beers them waiting for the crash coming real soon. But the OG consultant watching, he's seen it all before. Over 40 years in the game, he knows the real score. Bull versus bear, a real estate fight. Peter Zalewski tell you who's wrong and who is right. In the Miami can do investing club with no guess. He cuts through the noise and all of the mess. The Peter Zalewski Show. Big respect, OG in the game. Listen and learn the man's name. And up down. Peter Zalewski Show.
Happy Wednesday, Miami. This is the Peter Zalewski Show. I'm the namesake, Peter Zalewski. I'm a condo consultant. I'm also the founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. This is a program that we launched a few weeks back, and what's it all about? It's about introducing you, the community, South Florida Tri-County community of Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, to some of the different business leaders and the players that are around, in and around the South Florida area. Maybe you've been here, and we might introduce you to somebody you've met before or heard of. Maybe you're new to the market, and we're going to give you some people to sort of be aware of, or maybe you're thinking about coming here. And if so, these might be some individuals that might be able to help you out with any of the services you might be needing. We're going to have a straight talk conversation about a variety of different topics. That is the promise and the commitment with the Peter Zalewski Show. And what are we talking about today? We're going to talk about the office market. Whether you are looking for office space, you're looking for medical space, you're wondering about shared office space, any and all of the above. We're going to be discussing that today with a gentleman I've known for quite some time. I consider him a friend. His name is Oscar Musibay. Right now, he is a commercial real estate professional. Prior to that, he and I worked together in the journalism world. So Oscar and we're going to talk about a whole variety of different categories today, including what's going on with the information that's readily available or actually no longer readily available to anybody looking for statistics. And then from there, we'll venture off into what's going on in the office-based market. A lot of times what I see on the condo side is people will come in, they'll buy a condo, they're thinking it's going to be a second home, then they decide to move down here permanently, and then they want to move their business or they want to set up a business. So one of the things oftentimes you need in order to set up a business, especially if you have a significant other, is you need some place to go. So Oscar's going to give us some tips as to how do you find office space? What's it like? What are some of the rules of engagement? What's the cost? How do you measure it? How do you gauge it? Any and all of the above. So that is a long way of saying, Oscar Musibay, welcome. And Oscar works with Lee and Associates. It's a Los Angeles-based company that's spread out throughout the world, including North America. And Oscar's going to fill us in. So, Oscar, how's it going after that long introduction?
Well, it is Lee and Associates South Florida. That's important, because that's how they need to write it on our checks, wink, wink. And it's part of a large company, multi-billion-dollar company that does a lot of business all over the United States. And we are the experts for office in South Florida. That's my job, focusing on the office sector, representing landlords, tenants, sellers, buyers, pretty much everything under the sun, and land that might be developed for office. So there's a lot of options in the market. Office is a great asset to own, to sell, to occupy. And our market is very active. I've been very busy, and I expect to continue to be so for a long time.
All right, Oscar, let's talk a little bit about how you transitioned over into being a commercial leasing agent and or a sales agent for office type of space. I would say it was a natural, because you were a journalist for north of 15 years. And one of the things you wrote about was real estate in the Tri-County, South Florida area of Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. And anybody who knows a journalist knows the most dangerous people around, if you're doing something bad, is probably a journalist, because they know how to figure everything out. They know where everything sort of is. So, Oscar, I'd almost make the case much like me. I was writing about banking. I was writing about real estate. I then transitioned over to real estate, and it was seamless because I had gotten access to all those years of reporting out stories. From the access I got was to developers and to people in the industry. So when I went over into real estate, it was relatively an easy transition, because I like to think that I was sort of educated or informed by many of the people who were doing things, the pioneers. Was it a similar situation for you when you left journalism and then you ultimately worked yourself into commercial office space. And by the way, why did you choose office rather than going the route I took, which was condominium? For me, condos was easy because it was much more like a business segment of residential. Single-family houses, that's more mom and pop, but condos to me seem much more commodities-based, much more Wall Street level. So can you talk to us about your transition from journalism into commercial office space, and then why did you pick office space?
So I think for you and I together, Daily Business Review, which everyone remembers if you've been in this market for a long time, was a foundational publication that we both worked at together. We did stories together, covered real estate. I was real estate, you were banking, and we had a great time covering the market at that first wave in the 2000s. Really interesting what was going on. We met a lot of people, a lot of players that are still in the marketplace, had conversations with George Perez, Pedro Martin, David Martin, all these people who continue to be pivotal to how Miami has grown and all the money that has come here since. Mayor Manny Diaz, all these people were at the core, at that foundational stage of this new era for the city of Miami. And the great thing about knowing Peter is that he is a trendsetter. He is a groundbreaker. And I remember one day we were looking out the windows of Daily Business Review, and he was looking at the vultures, the turkey vultures that were flying. You remember this? And you told you were kind of laughing, making a joke about the turkey vultures, and that was because you were planning on launching this company. You hadn't told me yet. You were planning on launching this company that would stalk the marketplace to follow all the stuff that was going on, all the buildings that were breaking, and all the new projects and all the money. Fun times. You remember those days?
I do. And for anybody who's wondering about turkey vultures, what the hell are they doing in South Florida? Well, there was two things you can always count on in South Florida, at least you used to be able to, is you always knew when winter was here because these turkey vultures would migrate from up in Ohio, and they'd always head down to South Florida. And as soon as they arrived, they instinctively knew that winter was here. So we would watch for the turkey vultures. And and they call turkey vultures. I'm not sure why, but I'll tell you, imagine a turkey flying in the sky. That's how big these damn things are. They go, they fly, they land on the balconies of the condos. They land on the office, on the little stoops outside the windows of office buildings. And you cannot miss these things. So it was always like winter. You always knew that was going to go on. The other thing you could always rely on, you used to back in the day, is Miami, one of the ports. There's 4 ports down here in the Tri-County South Florida area. You're going to have Port Everglades, which is where Broward and Fort Lauderdale is. You're going to have Port of Palm Beach. You got Port of Miami. And then the 4th port is the Miami River. It's about a 5.5 mile long stretch of river. And that actually is a working port. So once a year, I would always watch in a newspaper for A, when the turkey vultures arrived, if I didn't see them, and B, there would always be a freighter coming from somewhere in the Caribbean and Latin America. It'd pull into the Miami River area. They'd start unloading, and next thing you know, all these people who had stowed away on the ship would take off running through the neighborhood, and the Miami Herald would always write about that. It's a different world that we live in today with the immigration policy, but back in the day, that was always an annual event. Those are the two ways I kind of mark the time. But turkey vultures, a regular occurrence. I haven't seen them yet this year, Oscar. Have you?
I don't get downtown as much as I used to. I mean, when we were in those buildings looking out the windows, we could see them flying around every day. But, my market is all of Miami-Dade, all of Broward. We do some work in Palm Beach as well. So it's a large area to drive. And I move around a lot. But you were asking about how I decided to make this transition. So when I started at the Miami Herald, it was a time when I was a general assignment reporter, basically. So I was covering the city of Homestead, the city of Florida City, all these places, doing city reporting, but also writing whatever story popped up. And I began that process because I wanted to be a good writer. That was my dream. Ever since I was a boy, I was writing poems and stories, and that was really my goal, to become a writer. And I saw the newspaper business as the best place to do that. So my focus initially when I started at the Herald was 100% write the most interesting story with as many words as possible, as colorful as possible. And then I realized over time that I wanted to focus more on the facts and figures rather than characterizing things. And I started in business, and daily business was that opportunity, really. I mean, I worked at Miami Business Magazine for a little while, doesn't exist anymore. And then daily business was another option. So that's where I really learned how to become a reporter and understand the mechanics of business, talking to all these people who are making all this money, talking about transactions, how properties were sold, how properties were financed, how transactions were financed, how zoning impacted the ability to develop a property, how they had to go before cities to make their case for why a project should be taller or smaller or wider, or have more units, have less, why residents were impacted, and how, and all of these things started becoming clear to me over time that they were fascinating, just an important part of the community that you would never see otherwise. So to me, this was extremely exciting. And luckily, I feel like Peter and I were able to enjoy that. We worked on some stories together, some really great award-winning stories together.
Some developers still remember us for that, and some of their kids
do. That's
some
right.
of their kids who
We're
have
not going to
taken
say
over,
who it is. We're not going to say who it is.
They still carry a grudge. Like, you wrote
Yes.
this about my father. Wait.
Right.
Now, it
Yeah,
had
it's
nothing
true.
to do. It had nothing to do whether or not the story was written was dead on accurate, but it has to do with somebody was offended. You don't want to offend anybody.
Right. Well, the good thing is that over time you realize how complex and difficult business is, right? Being on this side of the ledger, you realize the amount of time, the amount of vision, the amount of risk, the amount of being away from your family, all these things that you don't really realize as a reporter, how big a deal it is in making a project work. So in those days, I think we were not as aware of those factors. And now I can factor all of that into the pictures of how projects are done, how businesses move into office buildings, why they would choose one neighborhood over another. And I understand those characters much, much better, and realize that I would be a much better reporter today if I was reporting rather than in those days. I think my understanding of the business world is much more complex, much deeper, much more nuanced, which has a lot of value. And that's why I think I can have relationships with people that I knew back then, because I do have and did have a very good reputation as someone who was focused on facts and figures and the truth. And yes, in situations like that, you can think of any business person who's going to go into the business world and they're going to, at some point, upset someone and piss somebody off. It's just how business works. So covering business was like that. Being on this side of the ledger, very different, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And I'm able to apply a lot of the skills that you gain as a reporter, having communication with people, understanding what their needs are, listening to them, helping them, trying to, develop a relationship of trust so that you can create something special for them. Because the reality is that, like a single family home or a residential apartment, when you're choosing something like that, you realize you're going to spend a lot of time there. And an office is exactly the same. It's your home away from home. And for some people, it's actually more of a home than where they live. They spend a lot of time, especially when they're building their business from the start, trying to create an environment for themselves that will make them happy, that will allow them to succeed. And Peter, I know you're in this situation right now, because even though you've had this business for many years now, you're actually
20 years.
started 20 years.
20
it's
years
incredible.
in March.
Yeah, it's incredible. But you just did something in the last few years that's really interesting, which is create a Substack, you created a real estate club, all these interesting things that are taking up a lot of your time. And it's important that you find work-life balance, right? But right now you're in, I would say, 95% work mode. right? And I am invested in being an agent in the office sector for Lean Associates in the exact same way. I feel like I'm learning a lot, but I have a lot to learn. And really the thing that I bring to the table is my ability to research things, to tell people the truth, to help them understand complex ideas. Because what often happens in real estate, and Peter, you know this better than anyone, is that people come to you and they don't really know exactly how real estate works. Does that sound familiar?
Yes, very much so. The only thing they know is the nice glossy they might have seen, whether in my case, it's like condominiums. In your case, it's probably this brand new office building or this brand new lease that's available. Everything looks good. Right. It's all what I would say self side. This is a town really based on self side. The way everybody makes their money, remember, there's no state income tax. We don't really have unions or anything like that. So everybody basically is out there hustling, trying to make money.
Hustling.
They're all trying to promote positive things because they want you to, if you're an out-of-towner, to come here, park some cash, because if you do, they're going to be able to pay off their Maserati lease.
It's true. Well, I think that I was telling the story to someone today, is that the real estate world right now and how people in the public get information is sort of how people can get distracted and confused by something like WebMD, right? Like 10 years ago, WebMD was the source of all sources. And if you go on there in 10 minutes, you'll think you have every disease that's ever been known to man, that's ever been identified. And with real estate, with all these websites that are available for data, right? You can do a search, put in something like, I need an office in Kendall. And within a few minutes, you get a bunch of options to look at. But the thing is that the information that's displayed, each page, sometimes each listing is very different from the other. But because you're not acclimated, you don't know what the codes are, in essence, right? The language of real estate, it all seems the same. And you come to the situation and you're thinking, the rent is going to be this much. I can afford it because I looked at this listing. And then when you come to the agent, you're like, hey, but I just saw this thing for $30 a square foot. Why are you saying it's $60 a square foot? Well, it's because there's information that was missing on what you were looking at. And when you see the whole picture, it's different.
Oscar, let's drill down to that. Let me ask you some questions. Let's see if you can answer them real basically. And I'll kind of play prospective, either tenant for office space or prospective buyer for office space. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let me give people a comparison of what happens in the real estate market, the residential market, and you can sort of talk about the office market. So,
sure.
For instance, if I'm looking for a rental, I might go online and I might go to, I don't know, Zillow or anything else. And everybody should know, if you go to Zillow, about 85% of that, according to Ken Johnson, who's a professor now at the University of Mississippi, he used to be a professor at FAU. But according to him, about 85% of Zillow is actually the multiple listing service, just so you kind of know. But if you go ahead and you look at a listing for a rental, it's going to tell you how much it's going to cost per month. And there might be some other fees on top of it. Not really. My understanding is over on the office market, it's kind of like buying tickets off of StubHub or one of these third parties where you see the ticket price. Oh my God, I got a great deal. You go to pay, and at the end, they hit you with all these junk fees. And you're like, dude, it was supposed to be $50 a ticket, but now it's working out to like 90. Where the hell did they get the extra money? So, Oscar, can you walk us through very simply, when somebody sees an office space and maybe they hear something called triple net. I don't know, I'm not a fisherman, so I don't care about netting, but can you, I'm making a joke here, but can you kind of walk people through? So when they see a price, is that actually like it would be in a rental for residential, or is that kind of like buying a ticket off a broker and they say $50 a ticket and you're out the door at 90?
So the information and the language of real estate is consistent. It's not that it's not consistent. So no one's trying to fool anybody. The thing is that it's like any language that you don't know. You need a professional.
Starbucks. When Starbucks first came around, I don't even know what they are, a small, medium, large, but they always had a different name. And then,
That's right.
So,
exactly. That's a great way to explain it, right? Because venti and this and that, and you're like, venti, wait a minute, we're in America. So in office, what happens is that as I was explaining, office has its listings are on databases that are similar to what you see in residential. So it's not Zillow, it's CoStar, not Redfin, it's LoopNet. So some of them are very specific to commercial, and some you can find a bunch of different things, including residential and commercial. So that tends to confuse things a little bit too, right? But the ideal and what I use is strictly a commercial database. So when I search, I find very specific group of options. And then let's say I'm looking for an office of 1,500 square feet. And I'll plug that into the database, and then I tell it roughly the area that I want it to be. And then I may refine the search a little bit to make it a little smaller, the number of responses. But generally, I'm going to get, let's say, 20 hits, and then I narrow it down to 10, and then I narrow it down again to 5. And the goal is to present this as a report to the client. And in that report, what you're going to see is the rate that that the client is going to be charged for their office.
Now this is the tenant. This is the person who
right.
came to you and they're looking for office space. Okay.
That's right. So it's going to have a rate.
See a number.
See a number. And generally, you can set it up different ways, but you can set it up on a monthly basis, or you can do it by the square foot. There's different options that you can choose. And sometimes it's better to talk to the client in terms of the monthly budget, how much you're going to pay on a monthly basis, the monthly rent. Same ideas in residential. And sometimes it's better to explain by square foot. And the reason why by square foot is useful, and Peter, you know that because you've told me this a billion times, is that when you're comparing them side by side, the square foot price is actually the real price. You can get confused and think, oh man, this one is only $2,500 a month, and this one is $4,000 a month. So I'm getting a better deal at $2,500 a month. But what you're not realizing when you compare them side by side, the $2,500 a month space is 500 square feet versus the 4,000 a month space, which is 1,500 square feet. So you're actually paying a lot less for the larger space. And then it becomes about what you really need, right? Maybe you don't need 1,500 square feet. So you find something in the middle. But when you're looking at all this data, if you're not talking to a professional, you can get lost really quickly. And I have this conversation, I would say 80 to 90% of the time whenever I deal with a client for the first time. They come to me and they say, man, I saw this incredible deal in Kendall. And you're telling me that it's double the price. And I'm like, well, can you send me what you found, the listing? And they send it to me. It's like, well, it's because what you're seeing here is what's called the base rent. And the base rent is without common area maintenance, for example.